I'm Helen. I am a knitting designer based in London in the UK, and I have an audio podcast called Curious Handmade. So my designs and blog and podcast and pretty much all social media go under the name of Curious Handmade, and I have been trying to do a video podcast as an addition to my audio, and it's been a long time since I did my last one. In fact, this is only the third. But I've been watching a lot of video podcasts lately and really enjoying them, and wanted to join in the conversation a little bit at the moment, and also have a lot of things to show. So I thought I'd just try and record a really short episode. I have to race out in about 25 minutes, so it's going to be short. And I just thought I'll just see what I can fit in that time. So I thought I would talk about some recent designs, what I've been knitting. I've been working quite hard recently, so I've got a lot of new things that have come out. A lot since our last video podcast, so I won't go through everything, but I have a few new things recently, and then I will show you a few things that I have acquired recently, and some books, and maybe something else if I have time, but I probably won't have time, so I won't probably go into that. It's a new gadget, in case that's too mysterious. It's not really necessarily needed to be mysterious, but so yeah, I think I'll have a sip of tea because that's what you have to do. I think that people do this because you kind of do the introduction and then you're like, oh, whew, that's done. I need a sip of tea now. So there you go. I'm not very set up very well here. I'm in the kitchen, which is where I basically live. I work and knit and feed my kids in the kitchen, and myself, my husband to a lesser extent. But so I just leap into what I've some new designs that have come out recently. So I'm wearing one of them. This is called the 100 Acre Wood, and this was a collaboration that I did with Annie Lights. She's Annie Lights on Ravelry and Instagram. And her business is called Little Skein in the Big Wool. I think I say wood sometimes, but I mean wool. And she contacted me earlier in the year and said, would I like to do a collaboration based around Winnie the Pooh? And so of course I said yes. I love her kits. I bought one of her kits for The Secret Garden, which was probably my favorite childhood book. And but I love Winnie the Pooh, and so so the yarn is from a indie dyer in the US called Woolly Wonka Fibers. I think she's also called Anne. Yes, also Anne. And Anne Little Skein sent me a selection of yarns. So the kits are a gradient set, which is an amazing purpley green gradient, and some single skeins. And she wanted a design that would cover the gradient, a single skein, and two skeins together. So I hadn't read Winnie the Pooh for a long time, and I downloaded an audiobook, and I bought one of the books. I ended up downloading two of the audiobooks just to get a feel for, you know, some inspiring quotes or the stories. And one of the themes that Anne wanted to explore was friendship, the friendship between the characters, and which is, you know, such a lovely theme. And the gradient set was actually inspired by the 100 Acre Wood itself at dusk. And so she had a photo of Ashdown Forest, which is not that far from here. It's in the UK, and is where the original books were set. And so all these different inspirations. And I was just working on this when I was in Australia in the summer. And my dad's actually a beekeeper. He has a beekeeping business, sort of a small home-based business. And so the theme of bees and honey were quite high in my mind. And he has a little shop at home which consists of a table at the front of the house with an honesty box. And so, yeah, so I just kept coming back to the theme of bees and honey, and that's how I came up with this design. So I was looking for a stitch pattern that would represent honeycomb. I was flipping through one of my stitch dictionaries and saw this slipped stitch pattern and thought, oh, that kind of reminds me of honeycomb. And then I found this really simple little lace design for the bees. Someone said that it also looks like a bear, which I think it does as well. So you can take it either way. And so I worked away on that, and I sort of came up with a design for the gradient first because I wanted it to be very specifically for that gradient set, and I wanted the segments to really nicely show off the gradient. So I calculated how many rows for each colour, and I wanted to use each colour equally because they were beautiful. So I wanted to have it fairly evenly across the colours. So I did that, and then I scaled that back down for the single skein, which was fine. I sort of just took out a couple of the repeats to make it smaller. And then when I came to doing the stripes, I was kind of putting that off a little bit because I don't do a lot of stripe things, and so I was like a bit worried about that. And but in the end, I just went to my pattern and kind of coloured in stripes and worked out the percentages for each colour because, again, I wanted them to be even across the two colours. And so it just worked out perfectly. It was kind of like a little miracle because when I got through kind of putting, okay, this is going to be pink, this will be yellow, and at the end it was like 49.5 and 50.5, something like that. So it was crazy, but it worked out really well. So, and I'm really pleased with it. I mean, it's hard to say which is your favorite. Like, the gradient is incredible, but I feel like this stripy version is really cool as well. The stripes at the top, because the colours are fairly similar, it's pretty subtle, but I really like that actually. Yeah, I'm really enjoying wearing this. It's very soft, has a little bit of cashmere in the yarn. So that's that one. Kits are available from Little Skein in the Big Wool. I think they're available for pre-order up until the end of December. And the kits are beautiful. Anne has had some fabric commissioned. So it's Winnie the Pooh characters with little balls of yarn, playing with balls of yarn. So it's really sweet. The bags are gorgeous, and there's all sorts of other little goodies that you can choose. Stitch markers, there's some hand balm with a bee imprint on the balm. So I'm going to get some of those for Christmas gifts. Yeah, and the lovely yarn, of course. So they're available, and the pattern is available as a download on Ravelry. So if you're not in the US, if you're over here in the UK or Australia or somewhere where it can be a little bit difficult with shipping and customs charges, especially here in the UK, can be quite problematic in recent years, then you can just download the pattern and use some stash or buy some yarn locally. So that was that, and that was very exciting to bring out because I've been working on it for so long, put a lot of hours into that one, which was very lovely, but took quite a lot of time. And then, sorry for the rustling. At the same time, I had the Sunda shawl, which is the last shawl in the Shawl Society released. And this is, yeah, number 6. And this is knit in Tundra, which is a yarn from the Fibre Company. And so it's a asymmetrical, long triangle. And I haven't really written about this anywhere, but basically this was inspired by Maya from the Wool Barn. And when we had our first country house retreat, we had an evening where we talked about an item of knitwear that was meaningful to us. And she brought along a really fabulous scarf, which was chunky, garter stitch. I think it had a fringe rather than tassels. And ever since then, I was thinking that I would do a shawl inspired by that scarf. It was just a really quite a little bit retro, you know, just a big chunky scarf that you might make as a kid. I think maybe, I don't know if she had made it as a kid and it was a really old, you know, first thing she knit. I can't remember, but this was just really fun. And so she inspired this design. And so when I was designing it, I started with just basically garter stitch. But then that was a little bit boring to knit. And it would have been okay, except that I started off knitting with more increases, so it went wide. The angles were different, so it went wide twice as fast. And then I was like, well, that's just going to be like crazy. It was just going, the shape was not working because it would have been too short to wrap around you. And I wanted to keep it within 3 skeins of yarn because this is a very luxurious yarn and I didn't want it to be need too much of the yarn that would put people off using the Tundra because it's so gorgeous. But then when I recalculated the numbers, it's hard to explain, but basically, even though it was garter stitch, it was really hard to keep track of where you were because it's only increasing, I can't remember, but it was only going to be increasing on every sort of second row. So you really had to think about where you were in the stitch pattern, in the increases, but the stitch pattern didn't give you a clue where you were. And I was like, well, that's the worst of both worlds, isn't it? Because it's boring to knit, but you have to concentrate on it. Like, if it was boring to knit and you could just not have to concentrate on it, that would be fine. But boring and concentrating is not a good combination, is it? So, so then I was like, okay, well, I need to find a repeat that will let you know where you are in the numbers. I don't know if this is really making sense, but anyway, just a little bit of an insight into my design process on this one. So anyway, so that's what I came up with. So I came up with something that was, I think it's 8 rows. And so, so you have, then it's a nice, easy to memorize pattern. So you know which rows, it's consistent which rows you're doing increases on which sides, and so on. So there you have it. And I knew, I basically wanted to put tassels on all my Shawl Society designs because it was like boho kind of theme, and tassels and fringes, and I had this concept that there was going to be like all really hippie. It didn't end up being that way, but I thought I have to put tassels on the last one, and I think it really does work with this design as well. And so the way I wear it, because someone said it's more like it's a kind of a cross between a scarf and a shawl, and it is, and that was pretty deliberate, really. So basically I like to wear it so that the wide part is across my chest, and then I just wind this around like a scarf, so it's kind of a nice wide warm part here under your coat perhaps, and kind of the scarfy bit, and then all the tassels come down sort of if you place it like that, and it's just, oh, it's really cozy. This yarn is amazing. It's 60% alpaca, 30% merino and 10% silk. It comes in beautiful colors and I love it. I designed 2 patterns in last year's Knitband, a hat and a cowl, and they're just really, really lovely to wear. So it is quite expensive, this yarn. Here in the UK it's just under £20 a skein, like about 19 something. So, you know, it ends up being close to £60 for the scarf, but I mean, I think it's worth it personally because it's so nice, and it doesn't take you very long to knit. So I think I timed myself and it's about 8 to 10 hours to knit, so it's pretty fast. It's on 8mm needles. So a couple of comments that I just wanted to mention. Some people said they don't like tassels. That's totally fine. You don't have to put tassels on. Some people have used buttons, put buttons on the clothes, because it is quite nice to have sort of a little bit of weight. I mean, they're not that much weight, but it does sort of finish it off, I think. So some people have done pom-poms, which is adorable. So I really like the pom-poms and buttons. And some people have just left it plain, which is also totally fine. So with the tassels, basically I divided, when I finished knitting, I basically divided the yarn I had roughly in 3. So I kind of, how did I do that? I kind of wound it round a board and then kind of divided it in 3 and made sure I had some extra for the wraps around the top and tying it on. So yeah, so that was that. I don't think there's anything else I really wanted to tell you about this one. It's part of the Shawl Society. The Shawl Society is only available as a collection at the moment. I will probably release them as single patterns at some point next year, but I haven't worked that out how I'm going to do that yet. So for the time being, it's a collection, and we're just in, yeah, the last month of the knit along. And I will have some prizes for the overall knit along for all the shawls in all the threads, and yeah, I'll be finishing pretty soon, which is sad, but I think I'll probably do it again. I'm not sure when exactly, but yeah, it was so much fun, really inspiring. And so many people joined in and were really joined in a lot in the group, which was really fun, and on the Instagram. And a lot of people have commented that they've been to events and seen other Shawl Society, you know, people wearing their shawls, and kind of had a little wave or a little, you know, a little connection because of that. So that's been really nice. And then Knitband's just started, which is something I've been doing for this is the 4th year now, which is just doesn't seem like it was that long ago that I was doing the first one with the little red robin shawl. But yeah, so I'll just really quickly show this one. So this was the first window that opened last week, and the theme for this is alpine mountain skiing, snow, pine trees. So that's what this shawl really represents, is the mountains and the trees. And I saw this teal colour quite recently. Nora George, who's an indie dyer, Tracy, based here in the UK, posted this colour, which is rich teal, and I was one of the colours in colours in the theme that I'm sticking to this time is teal, along with pink and grey and cream. And so contacted her and said, oh, could I have a skein of that teal? It's perfect for Knitband. And we just were chatting on Instagram, and she said, oh, I could come up with a contrast colour. And so she did. And so she came up with this bespoke colourway. It's called Alpine Sunset. Really gorgeous, slightly corally pink. Very pretty. And I also did a small sample, which is a 1 skein, because the idea of Knitband is that it's a fairly quick gift knit scenario. And so this is Eden Cottage Yarns Titus in the Rosebud colourway. And if you haven't seen this colourway, I saw Victoria posted on Instagram quite some time ago, and it was like her first batch of it. And I was like, oh, love that colour. I do go for a bit of pink. In case you hadn't noticed, I like pink. Especially like dusky pinks. And so it's got like these kind of like, I think it's like rose petals that have lost their colour. Brownie speckles through it. And yeah, so I was like thinking, this is the reason why sort of the pink is one of the colours in the collection. And yeah, so that's what I want to say about that. It's a crescent shaped shawl. It's not too difficult, but it's not as easy as some of my other shawls because of the these chevrons are made up of make one left and make one right, and so that can be a little bit tricky to do if you're not used to them. When you're used to them, you kind of get into a routine and you kind of scoop in the back and then knit one and then scoop in the front, and you can get into a bit of a routine with it. But at first, sometimes it's a bit like, oh, which side is it? Is it left or right? My friend gave me a good tip to know if it's left or right. Basically, if you scoop your yarn and you're looking at the yarn and it's either you scoop it and the yarn, this is the yarn, it might either be going that way or that way. So the direction that it's pointing, sort of from bottom to top, the direction it's going is the whether it's left or right. So if it's pointing upwards to the right, then you're doing a make one right, and if it's pointing upwards to the left, then you're doing a make one left. Probably have to be sort of looking at it to really know what I'm talking about, but that's how I tell. That's how that was a great tip that someone gave me. My friend Pauline gave me, and I use that all the time. So that's Knitband. It's 6 designs. The next one is coming out in a couple of days. I'm doing this year's Knitband as a collaboration with my good friend Renee Callahan. She's East London Knit. She designed the Angela's Novus cardigan that I've talked about quite a bit on the podcast, and one of the few garments that I've knit. And so she's contributing 2 designs to the collection, and they're gorgeous. I can't wait to show you. And it's available as an ebook. This one will be released as single patterns after the end, just before Christmas. I think we'll release them as single patterns, but at the moment it's a pretty reasonably priced ebook, I think, for the number of patterns. And yeah, so that's happening at the moment. And one more design to show you. I might not even get onto anything else today because I'm going to have to go in a minute, but just quickly, I might do another bit later, except that I don't know how to join the 2 videos together, so we'll see. Anyway, just really quickly before I have to race off, because I have rambled on about those things a bit more than I thought I would. This is something that's coming out very soon. It's another collaboration. I've been having a lot of fun with collaborations recently with Danny from Little Bobbins. video podcast. Danny's based here in the UK, and we got together to create a kit because Danny every year has a knit along called the Christmas Eve cast on, and it's just cast on a sock on Christmas Eve. And we had a little bit of a chat about that on last week's podcast, my audio podcast. I chatted with Danny on the show, so you can hear a little bit more about the background to that there. So we said that we would create a bag, some yarn, and I'd do sock design, which is my very first. And we were Danny came up with the inspiration of vintage fairy lights. Of course, I love the fairy light theme as well. And we got in touch with Jane from Hedgerow Yarn, who we both love her yarn. She does just very delicate speckles and beautiful colours. And so she came up with this vintage fairy lights colourway for the kit, which was she took the colours from the inspiration. And so this little top bit is to represent the strings of lights. It's a top down heel flap, pretty straightforward design. And I was very I had in my mind the idea that it needed to be quite a simple knit, because if you're casting on Christmas Eve, I don't know about your house, but it can get a little bit boozy on Christmas Eve sometimes. Glasses of mulled wine, it doesn't take much, so we won't mention the eggnog. There's one famous Christmas disaster. None of us could get out of bed the next morning. Anyway, so I wanted it to be quite simple, but obviously a vanilla sock isn't really a design. It wasn't really saying anything, so I thought this was a nice compromise to have a little bit more complicated at the top and then just into a nice simple rib for the rest. I think it would be nice to have it, the fairy lights right down the leg, even down the front of the foot as well, if you wanted to. I just didn't do that because of the intention behind the design was for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day and relaxing. So yeah, so those, that's the design and the yarn. Crinkling, nice rustling. And this is Danny's bag for the kit. She does the most beautiful things. It's just gorgeous. So just everything is just complete and attention to detail. So the string of very vintage fairy lights across there. On the back, she's just got one with her little label there. Everything Danny does is beautifully understated and elegant and charming. So I don't know if you can really see it, but the fabric's sparkly, Christmassy, and then she's just done like tiny little details over like a little stitch on the light there. So so that's going to be our little kits, and again, the really limited edition. So keep a close eye on Danny's Instagram, and this week, and the pattern's going to be available on Ravelry if you don't get one of the kits but still want to join in with knitting this same sock. You'll be able to do that, and yeah, you'll be able to use the design before Christmas for gifts, or if you wanted to use it for your Christmas Eve cast on, I would be completely honoured. So yeah, so that's the other project. So I really am running late now. I wanted to show you a lot of other things, but I think I'll just have to do another episode soon. So thanks for listening. You can find me at curioushandmade.com, Curious Handmade on Instagram, and Helen Stewart Designs on Ravelry. And yeah, love to hear from you. We have a very chatty group on Ravelry, so come and say hello. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye.